I used to park in the garage on Whitmore, the one connected to the medical building downtown. 7 floors, yellow-tinted lighting on every level, concrete walls painted a gray-green that made everything feel underwater. One of those places you forget exists until you need it. I started a new position at a dermatology clinic on the 4th floor of the building next door. It was my first real job after finishing my residency program, Monday through Friday. I'd pull in around 7:45 in the morning, leave around 6. Sometimes later if we had charting overruns or inventory to finish. The garage was the cheapest monthly option within walking distance, and honestly the only one that didn't have a 3-month wait list. The first few weeks were completely normal. I'd pull up to the ticket machine, take my ticket, the arm would lift. I'd spiral up the ramp to level 3 because it was always half empty and the spaces were wider on that floor for some reason. Then I'd walk across the sky bridge into the building. The sky bridge always smelled like warm plastic and had these long, narrow windows that looked down onto the street. It shook slightly when trucks passed below. At the end of the day, I'd come back, drive down to the exit booth, hand the attendant my ticket. He'd scan it. I'd pay with my card. He'd hand me a receipt. The gate would lift and I'd merge onto 2nd Street and sit in traffic for 25 minutes until I got back to my apartment. I remember the attendant. He was older, maybe mid-60s, thin, wore a navy jacket over a gray-collared shirt that was always buttoned to the top, clean-shaven, glasses with thin metal frames. He never made small talk, never seemed unfriendly either, just efficient, quiet, in a way that felt practiced rather than shy. He had this habit of not quite looking at me when he handed things back. He'd reach through the window and sort of extend his arm without turning his head all the way, like he was watching something on a screen to his left, or like he was already done with the interaction before it finished. I never thought anything of it. I'd take the receipt, drop it in my center console with all the other receipts, drive home, make dinner or heat something up, watch whatever was on my laptop, fall asleep on the couch half the time because my bedroom was always too cold and I kept forgetting to mention the heating issue to maintenance. This went on for about 3 weeks before anything changed. But actually, there was one thing. Before the photos started, it was maybe the 2nd week, a Tuesday. I remember because I'd been at the clinic late for a staff meeting and I was one of the last cars on level 3. When I pulled up to the booth and handed over my ticket, the attendant processed it like normal. But when he handed back the receipt, he said something. He said, "Drive safe. Long drive home tonight." I took the receipt, said thanks, pulled away, and then about halfway down the block I thought, wait, I'd never told him where I lived. We'd never spoken beyond the transaction. He had no reason to know my drive home was long. My commute was about 40 minutes with traffic. Not unusual for the city, but not something he could know from a parking ticket. I told myself I was reading into it. People say drive safe all the time, the long drive part. Maybe he said that to everyone. Maybe it was just something polite he added because it was dark out. But he'd never said anything before, not once. In 2 weeks of daily interactions, he'd only ever said the amount, or have a good night. I let it go, or I thought I did. But I noticed after that, he never said it again, never added anything extra, went right back to silence, like that one sentence had slipped out and he'd corrected it. There was one other thing, small, maybe nothing, 2 days after the long drive comment. A Thursday. I was running slightly late in the morning and almost forgot my badge for the clinic. Had to run back to my car on level 3. When I came off the elevator and turned toward my space, I could see the booth below through the gap between the ramp wall and the ceiling. Just a sliver of visibility between floors. The attendant was standing outside the booth, on the exit lane, looking up. Not up at me specifically, or maybe at me. I couldn't tell at that angle, but he was standing in the lane between the booth and the gate arm, with his hands at his sides, just standing, looking at the upper levels. By the time I grabbed my badge and came back to the elevator, I looked again through the gap. He was back inside, sitting, screen glow on his glasses. I told myself he was stretching his legs, getting air. It was a small booth. Anyone would need to stand occasionally. But his posture, the way he was standing with his arms at his sides and his chin tilted up, it didn't look like stretching, it looked like listening. That was before the photos. The first photo came on a Thursday, late October. I'd stayed late for an inventory issue, and the garage was almost completely empty by the time I got back to my car. Level 3 was just me and 2 other vehicles at the far end. The fluorescents were buzzing louder than usual. That electrical hum they make when there's nobody around to drown it out. I drove down to the exit, handed the attendant my ticket. He scanned it. I tapped my card. He handed me the slip. I didn't look at it right away. I just dropped it in the console with the others. When I got home, I was cleaning out the console because it was overflowing with receipts and gum wrappers, and a parking ticket I'd gotten weeks earlier for being 2 minutes over at a meter downtown. I pulled everything out to throw away, and that's when I noticed the last slip wasn't a receipt. It was a photograph, small, about the size of a receipt actually, printed on that thin matte paper, the kind you get from a pharmacy printing kiosk, slightly warm to the touch like it had come out of a printer recently. It was a picture of my car, parked on level 3, from behind. You could see my license plate clearly, the wall behind, the yellow line on the concrete, the adjacent space empty, nothing else in the frame. I figured it was some kind of security thing, like maybe the system printed a photo confirmation of your vehicle for liability documentation. I'd never seen a garage do that, but it didn't feel completely impossible. Some newer systems photograph your plate on entry. I threw it away. The next day, everything was normal. I got a regular receipt. The day after that, regular receipt. Monday the following week, regular receipt. Then on Wednesday, it happened again. Same thin paper, same matte print, same approximate size. But this one wasn't my car. It was me, walking through the sky bridge, taken from behind. I recognized my coat, the navy blue wool one with the belt I never tied, my bag over my left shoulder. My hair was down that day, and it was unmistakable. The angle was slightly elevated, like a security camera, but not exactly. Security cameras are usually mounted in corners at steep angles. This looked more level, like someone tall standing behind me. I sat in my car at a red light staring at it, holding it up near the dashboard light. I didn't feel scared exactly, more confused, slightly irritated, like I'd been handed someone else's mail. I told myself it was the garage security system, that maybe they printed random stills for insurance documentation, that maybe there was some rotating verification process, that this was normal and I just hadn't encountered it at previous garages because I'd never had monthly parking before. I know that doesn't make sense. I knew it then too. None of those explanations actually held together, but I didn't want it to be something else. I didn't want to deal with something else. I'd just started the job. I was still learning names, still figuring out the filing system. I didn't have room for another problem. The next morning, I actually looked at the booth carefully when I drove in. Looked at the exterior, the ceiling above, the pillars nearby. There was no camera visible outside the booth that would have covered the sky bridge angle. Just the ticket machine, the arm gate, a small intercom speaker embedded in the concrete. Nothing pointed at the pedestrian walkway. I parked on level 3, same spot I always used. Second row, against the far wall, near the elevator bank. That evening when I left, I paid close attention to the attendant's movements. Watched his hands specifically. He took my ticket, scanned it on the machine to his right. The screen showed the amount. I tapped my card. It beeped. Then he reached sideways, not toward the register, not toward the receipt printer I could see mounted on the right wall. He reached toward something lower, below the counter on his left side, below my line of sight. He picked up the slip and handed it to me through the window. I looked at it immediately this time. It was a receipt. Normal. Time-stamped. Amount charged. Garage address printed at the top. Permit number at the bottom. I felt stupid for watching so carefully. Felt relief. Mostly relief. Thursday. Normal receipt. Same process. Friday. Normal. I stopped thinking about it over the weekend. I remember I went to a farmer's market on Saturday morning. Called my mom Sunday afternoon. Did laundry. Normal life. Monday I was running late because I'd slept through my first alarm. Didn't get to the garage until almost 8:15. Parked on level 4 because 3 was completely full for some reason. The whole day felt off. Long, busy. I didn't leave until almost 7. The garage was dim, quieter than usual. That buzzing again, more pronounced on level 4 because the ceiling was lower and the lights were older. I drove down the ramp slowly because someone had spilled something wet across the turn between 3 and 2. Dark streak across the concrete. Looked like coffee or oil. At the booth, the attendant was there. Same jacket, same posture, same glasses reflecting the blue light of his screen. He took my ticket, processed it. I tapped my card. He reached to his left. The photo was of my apartment door, from the hallway, looking straight at it. My unit number visible in the brass plate. The doormat I'd bought from Target. Brown, simple. The small hook I'd mounted above the peephole where I hang a seasonal wreath. It was the wreath I'd just put up the weekend before. Orange leaves and brown twigs. Fall colors. I looked up at the attendant. He was already facing his screen, his left hand resting on the counter, his right hand in his lap. He hadn't moved since handing it to me. I said something. I don't remember the exact words. Something like, "Excuse me," or "What is this?" My voice came out quieter than I intended. He didn't turn. Just said, "Have a good night." Same flat, neutral tone he always used. No inflection, no emphasis. Someone pulled up behind me. Headlights in my mirror. I drove home with the photo on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it at stoplights, picking it up and putting it back down. The lighting in the photo was natural. Daytime. Warm. Not from a security feed. It looked like someone had walked up to my door in the middle of the afternoon and taken a photo with a phone camera. close, maybe 3 feet away, then printed it on that same matte paper. That night I checked the hallway, walked up and down the corridor twice, looked in both stairwells, checked the elevator. Nothing, nobody. Just the same beige carpet and the same fire extinguisher case with the small dent in the glass that had been there since I moved in. I locked my deadbolt, put the chain on, checked the windows even though I'm on the 4th floor, sat on my couch and stared at the photo for a long time. I put it in my bedside drawer, then I took it out and put it on the kitchen counter. Then I put it in my bag so I wouldn't have to look at it. I thought about not going back to that garage. Seriously thought about it, but it was the only monthly option near the clinic. The next closest lot was a 15-minute walk each way. I'd looked into it when I first started. 2-month wait list. There was street parking, but the meters only gave 2 hours, and I worked 9-hour shifts minimum. So I went back. Tuesday morning I pulled in, took my ticket from the machine. But as I drove past the booth on the way up the ramp, I slowed down, looked at it. The attendant was inside. I could see him through the glass. He was sitting with his hands in his lap, still, watching me pass. He'd never done that before. Every other morning when I drove in, he was always looking at his screen, or looking down, or doing something with the receipts, never watching the cars come in. But he was watching me. I parked, went to work, couldn't focus for the first hour. Then I got busy and forgot. By afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself it was nothing. That evening I paid. He handed me a normal receipt. I checked immediately, held it under my dashboard light before I even released the brake. Normal. Time-stamped. No photo. Wednesday. Normal. Thursday I was starting to relax. My body was starting to unclench. Friday I stayed late. Left around 7:30. The garage was empty on the upper floors. My footsteps echoed in the stairwell when I walked from the elevator to my car. That particular concrete echo that makes one set of footsteps sound like two. I got in my car, drove down, paid. The photo was of my bedroom window, from outside, ground level. I'm on the 4th floor, so whoever took this was standing across the narrow alley between my building and the next. The angle was looking up. The blinds were half open. You could see the edge of my bed. The lamp on my nightstand. Its warm glow. It was dark outside in the photo, but the lamp was on, which meant it was taken at night, while I was home, while I was in that room or had just been in that room. I stared at it so long the car behind me honked twice. I pulled forward through the gate and drove. I don't remember the specific route I took home that night. I remember being in my apartment, standing in the bedroom, looking at the window. The blinds were still half open, exactly like in the photo. I closed them, pulled the cord so hard the plastic bracket cracked, and the whole assembly tilted to one side. I left it that way. I sat on the floor between the bed and the wall, pulled my knees up, called my sister. She lives about 40 minutes north of me. Small house, quiet street. I told her something weird was happening at the parking garage I use. I didn't explain the photos specifically. I just said the attendant was being strange and asked if she knew of any other parking options downtown. She could hear something in my voice because she asked twice if I was okay. I said yes, told her I was just tired from the new job. She said she'd ask around about parking. That weekend, I barely left my apartment. I kept checking the hallway when I heard footsteps, kept looking at the bedroom window even though the blinds were closed and crooked now. I moved a bookshelf in front of the window, dragged it from the living room. It was heavy. I had to empty it first, and then refill it once it was in place. I know that's paranoid, but I couldn't sleep with the window exposed, even with the blinds closed, even on the fourth floor. I thought about the alley, the angle. Someone would have needed to be standing at a specific point between the two buildings. At night, looking up, with a clear sight line to my window. I went down to the alley during the day on Saturday, stood where I thought the photographer must have been, looked up. I could see my window. The bookshelf was now visible through the gap in the tilted blinds. Anyone could stand here. The alley wasn't gated. It was between a dumpster enclosure and a utility access door. No cameras, no lights, except a single fixture above the back entrance of the neighboring building that barely illuminated the first 10 feet. Monday morning, I almost didn't go to work. I sat in my car in the apartment parking lot for 10 minutes with the engine running, watching other tenants come and go, watching the alley entrance in my rear view. Finally, I drove. I told myself I'd pay attention. If anything else happened, I'd report it. To management, to the police, to anyone who would listen. I pulled into the garage. Normal. The ticket machine dispensed my ticket. The arm lifted. I drove up to level 3. The attendant was in his booth. I could see him as I passed. He was looking at his screen. Not at me. Normal. That evening I paid. He handed me a receipt. I checked. Normal receipt. Tuesday. Normal. Wednesday. Normal. I began to think maybe it had stopped. Maybe whatever it was had run its course. Maybe it was a prank by someone in the building. Maybe a former tenant with a grudge against the unit. The explanations I gave myself didn't hold together, but I didn't need them to be perfect. I just needed them to exist so I could function. Thursday evening, the garage was busier than usual. A few people in the stairwell. A couple walking to their car on level 2 holding takeout bags. 2 men in business clothes waiting for the elevator talking about a meeting. I felt safer with people around. Normal Thursday energy. I paid at the booth. The attendant handed me the slip. It was me, inside my apartment, sitting on my couch. From the angle, it looked like it was taken from the direction of my kitchen, like someone was standing behind the breakfast bar, looking into the living room. I was on my phone, wearing the gray sweatshirt I wear almost every evening, my feet tucked under me, the TV on behind me. I could see its glow on the wall, but there was something wrong with the photo. On my coffee table, there was a mug, a white mug. I could see it clearly, sitting on the table next to the remote control and a book I'd been reading. I don't own a white mug. I have 4 mugs, 1 blue, 1 green, 1 with the clinic's logo on it from my first week orientation, and 1 black ceramic one my sister gave me as a housewarming gift. I know this because I have one of those small mug trees on my counter with exactly 4 hooks, and they're always full. The mug in the photo was white, plain white. No pattern, no logo. Sitting on my coffee table in my apartment, in a photo taken from inside my apartment. I looked at the attendant. He was watching his screen. I said, "What the fuck is this?" Louder than I expected. My voice bounced off the concrete ceiling of the exit lane. He turned, slowly, looked at me through his glasses. His expression was completely neutral. Not confused, not startled, not amused, not guilty. He said, "Have a good night." I said, "No." I said, "I'm calling the police right now." I said, "How do you have these? Who's taking them? Why are you giving them to me?" He didn't respond. He just sat there, hands in his lap, the same posture he always had, looking at me with no expression I could name, like I was a screen, like I was traffic. Then he turned back to his monitor. The car behind me honked. I pulled through the gate. I was shaking. My hands were wet on the wheel. I ran 2 yellow lights on the way home. When I got to my apartment, I went straight to the kitchen, looked at my mug tree. 4 mugs, blue, green, clinic logo, black ceramic. I went to the living room, looked at the coffee table. There was a white mug sitting next to the remote. I hadn't put it there. I don't own a white mug. I stood there staring at it for what must have been a full minute, afraid to touch it, afraid to look inside it, afraid that if I picked it up, the apartment would change around me somehow. Finally, I leaned forward and looked. It was empty, completely clean, dry, no residue, no smell, no fingerprints visible on the white surface, like it had never been used, like it had been taken directly from a shelf somewhere and placed on my table. Nothing more. I checked every room, every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain, inside the coat closet by the front door. The windows were all locked. The front door had been locked. The chain had been attached when I left that morning. The deadbolt turned. I specifically remembered engaging the chain because I'd started doing it every time. Because of the door photo, which meant no one had come in through the front door while I was gone. Not through any door, not through any window, but someone had been inside and left a mug, a white mug that appeared in a photograph handed to me at a parking garage exit booth, a photograph of something I hadn't come home to yet. The photo showed the mug already on my table. In the photo, I was sitting near it, using my phone, which meant either the photo was taken in the past and the mug had been there for days without me noticing, or the photo was taken in some version of my apartment that I hadn't arrived at yet. I didn't know which possibility was worse. I called the police, told the dispatcher someone had been inside my apartment, that I had evidence, that this was an ongoing situation. An officer came within about 20 minutes. Young woman, short dark hair. She walked through the apartment, checked the locks, checked the windows, looked at the chain on the door, asked me how long I'd been gone, whether anyone else had a key, whether there was a building master key. I showed her the mug, told her it wasn't mine. She looked at it, nodded, wrote something down. I showed her the photos, all of them, laid them out on the kitchen counter. She studied them, asked who took them. I said I don't know. I said they come from the parking garage attendant. I told her about the booth, the receipts, the progression. She asked the logical questions. Ex-boyfriend, spare keys, friends with access, maintenance workers. I said no to all of it. Nobody had a key. I'd changed the locks when I moved in 8 months ago. She said she'd file a report. She said to contact the garage management. She said to change my locks again. She said if anything else happened to call immediately and reference the case number she gave me. She left. I felt slightly less alone for about 10 minutes. Then the apartment was quiet again, and the white mug was still on my table, and nothing had been solved. I changed the locks the next day, had a locksmith come, new deadbolt, new handle lock, 2 keys only, one for me, one for my sister, nobody else. Then I called the garage, the number on my monthly permit paperwork. It rang 6 times. Generic voicemail. No company name, no person, Just a beep. I left a message about the attendant. Said I needed a callback. No one called. Monday I called again. Same voicemail. Left a more detailed message. Said I had evidence of harassment. Said I needed to speak to a manager immediately. Tuesday, no one had called back. So I went to the garage office. Ground floor. Near the south stairwell. Small door. Vinyl letters that said management. I knocked. Nothing. Tried the handle. Locked. I stood there. Tried to think. Then I noticed a laminated sign next to the door. Small. Index card sized. A property management company name. And a different phone number than the one I'd been calling. I called it from the stairwell. A woman answered on the third ring. She sounded busy. Background noise. Other voices. I told her I parked in the Whitmore garage, and I had a serious complaint about the exit booth attendant on the east side. She paused. Then she asked which booth I meant. I said the exit booth. Ground floor. East side. The one with the man inside. She said that booth has been automated since March. I didn't say anything. The stairwell hummed with distant ventilation. She asked if there was anything else she could help with. I said there's a man in that booth. Every single day. An older man. Navy jacket. Glasses. He takes my ticket manually. He processes my card. He hands me things. I've been interacting with him for over 6 weeks. Long pause. She said all exit functions in that garage are fully automated. No staffed positions since March. The contract with the previous staffing company was terminated. She asked if I might be thinking of a different garage. I was standing in that garage. Ground floor. I could see the booth from where I stood at the end of the corridor. There was someone inside. I could see the top of his head, the collar of the navy jacket, the blue glow of his screen reflecting off his glasses. I told her I could see him right now, that I was in the building, that I was looking at him. She went quiet, then said she'd send a maintenance tech to inspect. Within 48 hours, she took my name and permit number, said someone would be in touch. That evening, I didn't use the east booth. I drove all the way up to level 7, top floor, peeling paint, lower ceiling, a second exit on the west side, just an automated machine built into a concrete pillar. No booth, no window, no person. I scanned my permit card. The machine beeped. Gate arm lifted. I drove through and took the west ramp down to the street. Nothing happened. No photo. Just the gate. Just the road. I started using that exit every day. Added about 5 minutes to my departure. I didn't care. For a week. No photos. I installed a small camera in my apartment. Wi-Fi. One of those you stick on a shelf. Pointed at the living room and kitchen area. I checked the feed compulsively for the first few days. Nothing. Just my cat walking around, jumping on the counter, sleeping on the couch. Just empty rooms filling with afternoon light, and then going dark. The white mug was still on the coffee table. I hadn't touched it, hadn't moved it. I don't know why. I think touching it felt like accepting it into my life. So I just left it there. Like evidence I wasn't ready to process. I thought about calling the police again. But about what? Nothing new had happened. I was using a different exit. The photos had stopped. From their perspective, the problem was resolving itself. I started to wonder things I didn't want to wonder. Whether the management woman was right. Whether the booth was automated and I'd been seeing something that wasn't there. But that didn't explain the photos. They existed. Physical objects, printed paper, real images. I could hold them, show them to people. They weren't in my head. The management company never sent anyone, or if they did, they never contacted me about it. 10 days into my avoidance of the East booth, a Wednesday evening, I was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion where your body defaults to routine and your conscious mind goes somewhere else. I'd been in the clinic since 7. Difficult day. A biopsy result I had to deliver over the phone. That particular weight in your chest that doesn't leave for hours. I drove down from level 3 on autopilot, turned right at the bottom of the ramp, toward the east exit. I realized what I'd done when I saw the booth. The familiar glass, the shape inside. There was a car ahead of me. I watched it pull up, pause. The driver extended their arm toward the window, took something. The gate lifted. The car drove through. My turn. Already in the lane. Car behind me. No room to reverse. I pulled forward. I did not look at the booth window. I reached toward the wall and inserted my ticket into the machine slot. The automated slot built into the concrete below the booth window. I noticed it clearly now for the first time. It had always been there, below where the attendant sat. I just never used it because he always took my ticket through the window. It beeped, processed. Screen showed the total. I tapped my card. A receipt printed from the machine. I took it. Normal receipt. But there was something in the shallow metal tray below the slot. The change tray. A second slip of paper. Thinner. Already sitting there. Like it had been placed before I arrived. I almost didn't see it. Almost drove away. I picked it up. It was a photo of me sleeping. In my bed. Blanket pulled up to my shoulders. Face visible. Eyes closed. My mouth slightly open. The photo was taken from directly above. Like someone standing over my bed. Looking straight down. Close. The frame showed only me from the chest up. The pillow, part of the headboard. The bookshelf I'd put in front of the window was visible at the left edge of the frame, which meant this was taken recently, after I moved it. Within the last 2 weeks, I was wearing the gray sweatshirt, same one as the couch photo. I don't remember pulling through the gate. I remember the highway, then my sister's street, then her porch light. I had my work bag, my purse, the photos. I stayed with her that night, and the next night, and the next. I told her everything, start to finish. The car photo, the sky bridge, the door, the window, the couch with the white mug, the sleeping photo, the management company, all of it. She was quiet for a long time when I finished. Sat there, with her hands around her tea. Then she said I should never go back to that garage. I said, I know. She said I should file another report. I said, I know. Then she asked to see the photos again. I spread them on her kitchen table. All 5, in order, under the overhead light. She studied them, moved them around, lined them up in sequence, leaned close. Then she picked up the sleeping photo, held it under the light, squinted at the lower portion. She pointed at the corner of the image, the wall behind my bed, near the baseboard, low. She said, "What's that?" I looked. There was a small rectangular shape on the wall, very small. I'd assumed it was a shadow from the lamp angle, just darkness in a corner. But it wasn't a shadow. It was a photograph, taped to my wall. A small photo, receipt-sized, low behind the bed, near the floor. You'd never see it lying in bed. You'd never see it standing in the room. You'd never see it from any normal angle. You'd only see it from above. If you were standing directly over the bed, looking down. I had never put a photo there. I had never seen it. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. Slept at my sister's. Guest room. Door locked. Light on. Saturday morning she drove me over. Daylight. She parked right outside the entrance. Came up with me. Waited in the living room while I went to the bedroom. I pulled the bed away from the wall. The photo was there, exactly where it appeared in the sleeping image, taped low, about 4 inches above the baseboard. Single piece of clear tape, smooth, precise. I peeled it off. It was a photo of the parking garage. Level 3, my parking space. Empty, no car, but on the ground of the space, centered between where my front tires would normally sit. Something written in white chalk or paint marker. Block letters. A date. I had to hold it close. The image was small and the writing was at an angle. The date was 3 days from that Saturday. Tuesday. My sister was in the doorway. I showed her. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she said I wasn't going anywhere near that garage on Tuesday, that I wasn't going anywhere near downtown. I agreed. We searched the rest of the apartment. Every wall, every baseboard, under shelves, behind furniture, inside closets, behind the refrigerator. Nothing else. But the camera, the Wi-Fi camera on the shelf. I checked the feed history on my phone. There was a gap, Thursday night, between 2 and 4 in the morning. 2 hours missing. Not corrupted, not overwritten. The timeline simply jumped from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., like those hours had been removed. Thursday night was the same night the sleeping photo was taken. The night before I'd found the picture taped behind my bed. Someone had been in my apartment for 2 hours. In the middle of the night, while I was sleeping, they stood over me, took a photo, taped another photo to the wall behind my bed, and left, without opening a lock, without triggering the camera, without waking me, without leaving any trace except the things they chose to leave. I quit my job at the clinic, gave 2 weeks' notice, said it was personal. They were disappointed but understanding. I broke my lease, paid the early termination fee, moved in with my sister, brought my cat, left the white mug on the coffee table. I didn't want it near my sister's house, didn't want it in a box with my things. I just left it there for the next tenant to deal with or throw away. Found a new position about 3 weeks later. Different part of the city, smaller practice, slightly less pay. I didn't care. I just needed distance. Found a new apartment. Across town, different neighborhood, different building, ground floor unit this time. I wanted to be able to see everything around me. No more 4th floor wondering what angle someone was using. I parked in an open surface lot. No garage, no booth, no structure, just asphalt and painted lines, and a pay-by-app system on my phone. Weeks passed. The world became normal again. My version of normal. I still checked locks 3 times, still scanned every face in public, still woke up at 2 a.m. and lay still listening for sounds. But no photos, no mug, no camera gaps, no impossible evidence of presence. I started sleeping better, started cooking again. My cat settled in. I put herbs on the kitchen windowsill because the ground floor got good morning light. Started running on weekends. Joined a book club my coworker organized. Small things, normal things. I thought about the garage less. The attendant's face became less clear in my memory. The navy jacket, the glasses, but his expression stayed sharp. That flat, neutral nothing. But the date stayed with me, written on the floor of my parking space. 3 days from the Saturday I found it, that Tuesday. I wasn't anywhere near the garage that Tuesday. I was at my sister's house, safe. But I kept wondering, what was supposed to happen? What was the floor meant to communicate? A warning, an invitation, a deadline. Did something happen there and I just don't know? I lasted about 2 weeks before the wondering became unbearable. I asked my sister's boyfriend to drive past the garage. Just look at it from outside. Tell me if anything seemed different. He thought it was excessive, but he did it. He said it looked normal, busy, cars going in and out. He said the east booth appeared empty from outside, just a machine behind the glass, no person visible. I told myself to let it go, move on. Whatever it was, whoever it was behind me now. 6 weeks after the move, a Saturday morning, early, maybe 7:15, I was standing at the kitchen counter in my new apartment, still in my sleep clothes, hair up, coffee machine dripping, scrolling my phone. I went to take out the recycling, and there was a piece of paper on the floor by the front door, flat, white, like someone had slid it under from the hallway during the night. I picked it up, a photo, my new apartment building, from across the street, my kitchen window visible, the herbs on the sill, and in the window, a shape, a figure standing at the counter. Me, based on the light, the angle, the herbs I'd only planted the previous week. This was taken that morning, or possibly the morning before. Same position, same window, same figure in the same spot. I looked at the door, deadbolt locked, chain on, both engaged before bed. Always. I looked at the photo again, carefully, in the lower right corner, very small, printed directly into the image like a watermark or a file stamp. A number, 7. I counted. Car, 1. Skybridge, 2. Apartment door, 3. Bedroom window, 4. Couch, 5. Sleeping, 6. This one, 7. I turned the photo over. On the back, small, neat handwriting, black ink. Careful, 12. Just the number, nothing else. I stood in my kitchen holding it. My coffee finished brewing behind me, and I didn't move. 12. 7 of 12. 5 remaining. A count, a system, a progression toward something. I put the photo in the folder with the others. The clear plastic folder I kept in my bag now. Always. 3 days later, the 8th, it was in my mailbox. The locked cluster mailbox in the building lobby. You need a key. My key. Nobody else has one except the postal carrier. I opened the box for a package notice, and it was there, on top of a utility bill and a credit card offer. A photo of me at the grocery store, produce section, holding a bag of apples in one hand and looking at my phone with the other. The angle was from about 20 feet away, end of the aisle, near the organic display. The shot was level with my body, not elevated, not a security camera. Someone standing there, in the store, watching me, taking a photograph while I picked out apples. The number in the corner said 8. I flipped it over. 12. Same handwriting, same ink. I tried to remember that trip. When had I bought apples? Earlier that week. Tuesday, maybe. After work. The store had been crowded. I was tired. In and out. I hadn't noticed anything unusual. Hadn't felt watched. But that's the thing. I never feel watched. Not during. Only after. Only when the evidence arrives. The 9th came last week, Tuesday, on my windshield. Tucked under the driver's side wiper blade. In the open surface lot where I park for work. In the middle of the day. I found it when I left at 5:30. It was a photo of me in my sister's living room, through her front window, at night. The lamp behind me casting warm light, my sister next to me on the couch. We were both looking at something on the laptop. She had that blanket with the moth holes across her legs. I could see my own profile. Relaxed, comfortable, safe. Or what I thought was safe. The number said 9. The back said 12. Same handwriting. I stood in the parking lot holding it, my hands steady now, almost calm. I think that's what scared me most, that I was getting used to it, that the progression had become familiar, expected, like a subscription I never signed up for. 3 more. I've been looking for the attendant, in every crowd, on every sidewalk, in the rear view at every light, in every grocery aisle, in every parked car on every street I walk down. I never see him. Not his face, not his jacket, not his posture, not his glasses. I don't think he's the one taking the photos. Not all of them. He can't be. They're taken in different cities, different times of day, different angles. Some from 20 feet away in a public space, some from inside a locked apartment while I sleep. But he's part of it. He was the delivery system, the hand that passed them through the booth window with no expression and no explanation, the flat voice that said, "Have a good night," while handing me pictures of myself taken without my knowledge or consent. I don't think he's alone. But I don't know what that means. I don't know if there's a network, a system, a purpose. I don't know what 12 means. It could be 12 photos, a complete set, like documentation, like a file being assembled one image at a time. It could be 12 days, a timer, a window closing. It could be something else entirely. Something I wouldn't understand even if someone explained it. I keep thinking about the date on the parking space floor. The Tuesday I wasn't there. What happened in that empty space? Whether the chalk is still there. Whether someone else parks there now and sees it every morning without knowing what it means. I keep thinking about the booth, how it's automated, how nobody works there. How I saw him every day for weeks. How other cars used the machine and I used him, like we existed in slightly different versions of the same place. I keep thinking about the white mug, how it was in the photo before I found it, how that's either impossible or it means the photo was taken during one of the times I was already home and just didn't see it yet. Sitting on my table, waiting for me to notice. How long was it there before I noticed? How many things are in my space right now that I haven't noticed yet? Last night I couldn't sleep. 2 a.m., lying in bed in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling, my cat asleep at my feet. Everything quiet. I got up, went to my bag, pulled out the folder, took all 9 photos to the kitchen table, spread them out in order under the overhead light. I'd looked at these images dozens of times, showed them to my sister, to the police, to my therapist, studied the subjects, studied myself in them, my posture, my clothing, the timing. But I'd never really looked at the rest of the frame, the edges, the spaces I wasn't meant to focus on. I started with the first one, the car on level 3, the concrete wall behind it. I looked at the upper left corner, just gray wall and yellow light. And then I saw it. A shadow on the wall, not from the car, not from the ceiling light fixtures. A shape that didn't belong to any object in the frame. Small, upright, like a figure standing just out of frame casting its shadow onto the wall. The shadow had a specific posture, slightly forward lean, head tilted to one side, like someone watching with curiosity. I picked up the second photo, the sky bridge, me walking, windows on the left showing the street below. I looked at those windows. The street below was slightly blurred, people walking, cars, but one figure on the sidewalk was still, perfectly still while everything else had motion blur. Standing in the middle of the pedestrian flow, looking up, toward the bridge, the same posture, the same slight forward lean, the same head tilt, the apartment door photo. I looked at the carpet in the hallway, the bottom edge of the frame, and there at the corner, a shadow across the beige carpet. Not mine, not from the ceiling light above the door. A shadow with a tilted head, cast from something standing just outside the frame to the left. I went through them all, every single photo. Every one had the same thing, a figure, or a shadow of a figure, at the periphery, the margins, always with that same lean, that same tilt, like a recurring signature in the corner of a painting, in the bedroom window photo, in the building across the alley, one window on the second floor, and in that window, a shape, dark against a darker room, standing still, head tilted, looking down, toward where the photographer must have been standing. Not the photographer, something else, watching the photographer, or watching me, or watching both of us. In the couch photo, the one taken from behind my kitchen counter, I looked at the hallway behind the living room, the narrow dark space between the kitchen and the bedroom. There, in the shadow where the hallway turns, just barely visible, the outline of a figure, still, tilted, inside my apartment, in the sleeping photo, taken from above. I looked at the baseboard area, not the hidden photo on the wall, but the floor next to the bed, and there was a shadow there too. Not mine. I was horizontal. This shadow was vertical, like someone standing at the foot of the bed, looking at the photographer above me. Two of them, in my room that night, one standing over me with a camera, and one at the foot of the bed, watching. The grocery store, produce aisle. I looked past myself in the image, down the aisle, beyond the display, and at the very end, a figure, not shopping, not walking, standing at the end of the aisle with a slight lean, head tilted, looking in my direction, too far away to make out features, just a shape, a posture, that posture, always that posture, in every single image, my sister's living room photo, the 9th, taken from outside through the window. I looked past myself and my sister on the couch, past the laptop, into the background, my sister's hallway, the dark space past the living room where the bedrooms are, and there, clearer than any of the others, a figure standing in the hallway, facing the window, facing the camera, facing whoever took the photo from outside. Not just a shadow this time, not just an outline. I could see the posture clearly, the lean, the tilt, the hands at its sides, the shape of a body. A dark form against the dark hallway, but distinct enough to see proportions. Height, stance. It was inside my sister's house, behind us, while we sat there on the couch feeling safe. And it wasn't hiding. It wasn't caught accidentally in the frame. It was positioned, centered in the hallway, facing the window perfectly, like it knew the photo was being taken, like it was posing. I sat at my kitchen table staring at these 9 images until the sun came up. That same figure, that same lean, that same tilted head, in every photo, from the very first one. It was never about the attendant. He was just a hand through a window. It was never about who was taking the photos. It was about who was in them. Something has been present. In my parking space, in the sky bridge, in my hallway, in my alley, in my living room, in my bedroom while I slept, in a grocery store aisle 20 feet away, in my sister's house. In every location, every image, every moment being documented. I was looking at myself. That's what I was supposed to do. That's what anyone would do. But it was always there, at the edge, in the dark, in the peripheral space the eye skips over, waiting for me to finally look. I don't know what happens at 12, but I think 12 is when it stops needing to wait. When 9 becomes 10, and 10 becomes 11, and 11 becomes the last photo anyone takes of me from a distance. Because 12 might not be a photo of me at all. 12 might be taken from where I'm standing. I'm at 9. Subscribe for more horror stories. Comment what kind of horror unsettles you the most, and press the bell icon to get haunted.